attended my session initially in the conceptualization and developing the research question session. Today's session is about preparing the protocol and registering the protocol. So what is this protocol? Let's keep it simple. Let's take it in a layman term. Imagine yourself as a jet pilot, and you are going to begin your session of flying. If it's your duty today to take the flight or fly the flight, it doesn't mean that you can just jump in and take off the flight and land it. You should follow certain step-by-step procedure, which you should prepare ahead before you get into the flight. So that step-by-step procedure or the preparation which you need before you start your work is called as the protocol. So in this example itself, if you take like the flight plan protocol, so as I said, in the aviation, you cannot just like jump into a flight and or jet and fly wherever you feel like. You need a strict step-by-step procedure so that the flight is safe, predictable, and successful. If the flight plan is the protocol, then the goal of the protocol is the destination where you're going to reach. Your destination is the goal to test if a new synthetic fuel allows this flight to fly from example Bangalore to Delhi or Delhi to Bangalore, whatever it is, using this amount of fuel. So you should make sure whether this percentage of fuel which I have in my flight is enough to reach the destination. So your goal, that is the goal. And the methodology should be applied. The route rules, the pilot should write down the exact details of the flight beforehand so that you will be able to fly this much distance in this timing and this duration, whether the flight which you are flying will be able to fly all this while, all those method rules, route, everything you should note it down. And then the subject, the plan, your flight plan should specify who and what is on the plane. You should make sure whether that flight will be able to carry a specific weight to keep the test fair. And also the safety and ethics, the checklist. Just like pre-flight checks, the protocol lists emergency procedures. If the engine temperature spikes past a specific limit, then what will you do? You can't take any decision in the middle. So it's always better to prepare ahead and check the safety and ethical policy, everything. And the black box in the flight, it's like the data collection. It automatically sensors the record, the exact fuel burn rate every 60 seconds. So this is the protocol for flying a flight for a pilot. So the pilot cannot change the plan on a emergency or sudden basis, which will put them in danger. So it's always good to plan ahead and then carry out your work. So coming to the research protocol, as I said, the protocol is a step-by-step procedure, step-by-step plan, which you work ahead of your beginning the research so that you carry out the research in a smooth and precise manner and complete it in a successful way. So as I told you, the research protocol is a binding scientific, ethical, and legal contract. As I told you with the example of pilot with his flight. So you should have a ethical, you should have a goal, you should have a legal procedure to carry out your work. So it's like a blueprint that governs every decision before, during, and after a study. So you should have the scientific document, you should have the ethical document, and then the legal and the regulatory contract should be there, and also your administrative roadmap. So you should be registered with certain agencies. We'll talk about that. So I hope you have understood what is a protocol. A protocol is a plan which is needed to carry out the work, and that work should be having a scientific, ethical, and legal contract. So this protocol is prepared by the reviewers using the conceptual and methodological aspects, and it should be a step-by-step plan. Why do you need a protocol? The protocol is needed like explained in the example of a flight journey. It's needed to carry out a successful, smooth precision work, and also to avoid the errors happening or emergency or any damage or danger encountering. So you need a protocol to reduce the reviewer bias so that it can limit the impact of expectations, so that you will be very straightforward to what you want to do. Instead of just haphazardly going here and there, you are narrowing down on what you are going to do. It is necessary for project management guidance, role allocation, and also for mechanisms for resolving the disagreements and scheduling. Example, you will plan a protocol, and if somebody else also following that, then you have registered for it. I'll come to that point. That's the step needed for registration. So when you register it well, then others cannot copy it, or you can defend against that. So it is for a management, project management guidance, and also to prevent the disagreements between the work. So the core purpose of writing a protocol is it should be reproducible. It's a method documented in granular detail, and to avoid the or minimize the bias, and also with the ethical clearance you should carry out, so that we can apply for the funding and get the approval from the funding agency. So what about the hierarchy? What about the structural framework to prepare a protocol? The protocol should have a title and abstract in it. The protocol should have a title and abstract in it, and it should be the protocol should have a title and abstract in it. Then it should have an introduction and also the rationale. And you all know what should be there in the abstract. We'll see step by step. And it should have a research question and its hypothesis. There should be objectives. The objectives should be again in two ways, like primary and secondary. We'll discuss about it in detail. It should have a methodology. The methodology should have a design. The methodology should have the participants. Methodology should have the variables. Like if you remember, we have discussed in the previous sessions, the PICO. So the methodology should follow the PICO framework. It should have a statistical analysis plan. They say SAP. Statistical analysis plan should be there. Then, of course, the ethical approval and consideration should be there. Then the timeline and budget. While preparing your protocol or thesis, you must have come across something called the Gantt chart. We'll talk about it. So the Gantt chart should explain all this timeline and budget and the completion of the work. It should also have the references and the supplementary data as appendices in the appendices. So a standard protocol should have all these criterias in their work. So the anatomy of protocol, as I discussed before, the components vary. The components vary based on what study you are going to do, whether clinical trial, it's animal model, or a qualitative study. But there is a standard protocol which should follow. Every standard protocol will follow certain hierarchies. That is the one which we discussed in the previous slide. So like administrative and title data, the identity, it includes a descriptive title, investigator names, institutional affiliations, and the version control with the dates. This title, can anyone tell me how many words should be there in the title? You might have written many work, many proposal, many papers you might have published. So can you please tell me what is the ideal word to be there in the title? Can anyone? Number of words. How much is allowed? Can anyone tell me? Okay, I'll I'll talk about it. We'll see in the upcoming slides. The background and rationale, the why. A concise literature review should be done in the background, and it should establish the current state of knowledge, the distinct gap, and why this specific study matters. Why are you concerned about doing this study? How are you going to get benefited, or how are you going to benefit the society with your study? Then there should be a hypothesis and objective. The hypothesis is the target. As I told you, when you start a flight, the goal, your destination, that's the target, that's the hypothesis. And the objective should have a primary and secondary objective. These must be focused, measurable, and realistic. Methodology and design, the how, the core engine, the methodology is the core engine. It outlines the study design. Example, you may be doing a randomized control trial, cross-sectional, in vivo model, in vitro model, human study. And this methodology and the design, the how, should contain the inclusion as well as the exclusion criteria, sample size calculations, precise interventions or treatments, and data and collection procedure. What is this inclusion and exclusion criteria? Like suppose your study is about stroke, and you're focusing to do it on patients, human. So if you try to use the Boolean operators and search for the literature review, you will pull out so many articles related to the stroke model. But what we need, our aim is to do on the human. So we will include the study done on the human population and exclude the study whichever we pulled out. The studies, if they contain the literature review which we pulled out contained animal study, that will be excluded. And also you will be having a specific duration for your study, like 6 months from 2025 August to 2025 December or 2026 January. So you will be excluding the studies which were collected before that and after that. So these are all considered under the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And your protocol should have a SAP, that is a statistical analysis plan. It specifies exactly which statistical test will be used to analyze the data before the data is collected. Like we say, multivariate analysis will be done, student t-test will be done. We use the SPSS, we use the Prism graph pad, like that. So many statistical tool will be used, and you should mention that and make sure you are using the authentic one, not the pirated versions or pirated tools. Ethical considerations, it is a guardrail. The details regarding informed consent, data privacy, minimization of the risk, and management of adverse effects or adverse events or biohazards, everything should be mentioned in your ethical application, ethical form, and make sure you are getting approved with all those what you require. As we discussed, the title, key, and abstract and keywords. Just now I asked you, right? A title should contain how many words? For a good quality proposal or research, you should have the title within less than 20 words, less than or equal to 20 words. And it should be declarative, and it should have the PICO map. What is this PICO map? Just like I told you, example is given here. Example of a PICO of a title with the PICO framework. Efficacy of yoga-based interventions versus standard antihypertensive therapies in adults with stage 1 hypertension at 12 weeks, a randomized control trial. So this is the title of the study. In this, what is the P? The population. So the population is adults with stage 1 hypertension is the population in this study. And what is the intervention? With the yoga-based intervention. And what is the comparator, or who is the comparator? The standard antihypertensive therapy. That's the comparator for this study. And what is the outcome? BP reduction at 12 weeks. That's the outcome of the study. So this is how a study title should be framed, which should include all these framework. And the structured abstract, you must have seen in all the journals mentioning the abstract should be within this word only, within this number of words. So usually normal or ideal or quality abstract will be considered if that abstract has 250 to 300 words organized under the structured abstract, called as it should have background, objectives, methods, results, expected outcome, implications, everything should be there. It is the only section most reviewers will read in full, not your entire paper, not the discussion what you have written, not the conclusion what you have written. First and foremost, they will ask for you is the abstract, the structured abstract. And nowadays, the paper encourage giving a graphical abstract. The journals encourage asking for or preparing for a graphical abstract. That will be like giving a very good, clear idea before they enter into your study. If they found it interesting, then they get into the depth of what you have written in your paper. Then the keywords, usually 5 to 8 numbers of keywords are accepted, and it should follow the mesh aligned framework. That is the medical subject heading terms drawn from PubMeds, or a few other indexations are included or accepted. So this is how your title, abstract, and the keyword should be framed. Then the introduction and the literature review. What the introduction should have? It should argue from broad burden down to a single. There are so many things about your study which you are going to do, but you should explain it in a clear format. What is the what is the story behind your study? What are you going to explain in your study? That should be given in the introduction part. So from a broad spectrum, you should bring it down to a small or single pattern, the unresolved question. Cite the most recent systematic review or umbrella review. Cite original studies whenever they are pivotal. State the knowledge gap. Yes, that is more important. This is the knowledge gap or the research gap in this study. That's why I am going to do this study. So if the knowledge gap is not clear, then there are chances for the protocols to get rejected. And many of the protocols fail with this knowledge gap only due to the insufficient explanation about the knowledge gap. And conclude with the rationale why this study and why you are doing this study now and why in this population. So this all should be made sure that it is explained in the introduction part and the literature review part. Then we have to frame a research question. That the research question should have all these frameworks, the PICO and the FINER frameworks. These 5 tests every research question should pass. What is that 5 test? The FINER test. It should be feasible. It should be feasible. It should be having adequate subjects. It should have the expertise, and it should have the enough duration to finish the study, and there should be the funding for your study. And the study should be interesting to you, first of all, and to the peers and to the community. And there should be novelty in your research. So try to bring what is not done and what will be the impact you are going to give at the end of your study to the society. And definitely the ethical clearance should be obtained, and the study should be relevant to the science policy, patient care, population, everything. And PICO, we just the PICO framework should be followed. Then moving on to the objectives. Prepare your objectives or write your objectives with the SMART framework. What is that SMART? S stands for specific, that your study should be very specific, or your objective should be very specific. It should have a single outcome. It should be measurable, that is quantifiable with a validated instrument, that is a SAP. And it should be achievable. It's not like you start a study and then in the middle you cannot leave it and go. It happens many of the times because of so many other reasons. But when we prepare our study itself, is better to plan the primary objective with all these considering the factors whether our research can be achieved and the results can be obtained by using this study, by using this methodology, by using this budget within the time frame. Everything should be checked before we start, and there should be the relevancy should be there, and the objective should be tied directly to the research question, and the time bound. If you say that this is the study population in this duration, make sure that you are completing the study in that duration. So a primary objective should be a single pre-specified statement that drives a sample size calculation and the primary statistical comparison. The secondary objective should be hypothesis supporting, not it should be hypothesis generating. You should not go and start generating the hypothesis there. Your hypothesis should be fixed before. It can be a null hypothesis or it can be an objective hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, everything. Whatever it is, it should be fixed before. In the middle of the study, you should not go in search of the hypothesis. So it should be adjusted for multiplicity, and it should be relevant as we discussed again and again. Methodology is should be divided into 3 categories, like methodology A, B, C. We'll see what is the difference in that. First is the study design and setting. So what type of study you are going to do, whether you are going to do a randomized control trial, that is experimental or causal, and cohort, whether you are going to do a cohort study, the longitudinal observation, or a case control retrospective study, or a cross-sectional or qualitative, and the mixed methods. So your study design should be clear, and the setting should have or should answer whether you are going to do in a tertiary hospital or a primary health center or a community center or a multi-center. So your setting should be clear in the methodology. And also the duration, whether you have the recruitment window for this many period, how many days or how many months you are going to follow up with that patient or with the study, and the total study period should be very clearly mentioned. Unit, whether you are going to do in an individual or a household or a cluster or ward, and also whether you are going to allocate the study with the randomization method or whether you have concealment for a certain period or with a certain data, everything should be clear. Then methodology B is about the participants and sampling. Nowadays, ICMR has given restriction. It's not recent, it's from a long time. They have given restriction in the participants, in the category of participants what you should do a study on. So everything should be planned in ethical way and by doing the groundwork. So inclusion criteria, the methodology participants should have inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. The inclusion criteria should include the target population by clinical, demographic, and the temporal criteria. Each criterion must be measurable at screening, and it should be healthy, compliant, age bands, diagnostic confirmation, informed consent capacity, and also the participant should be allowed to withdraw their study whenever they are not interested or if it is against whatever promised to them is going. And the exclusion criteria, you cannot just say that I am excluding this. You should give proper justification for excluding certain criterias on safety, scientific, and feasibility grounds. Avoid over exclusion. That's what I told you. Just like that, you cannot say that I'm excluding this, and you should not exclude everything. So avoid over exclusion that erodes the external validity. Then certain populations like pregnancy groups, comorbidities, contraindicated medications, prior enrollment, all these are restricted by the ICMR 2017, I think, the rule. We'll see that. Then the methodology C should have the variables and data collection. And the variables can be independent, dependent, all those are in depth we will discuss about in one more session. Statistical analysis plan. The statistical analysis plan must pre-specify or must specify. It is the first line of defense against the hacking. We'll see that. So it should specify the primary statistical test, assumption and how violations will be handled, handling of missing data, subgroup analysis, multiplicity correction strategy, and also the software, which version you are going to use, interim analysis, the stopping rules, all those should be explained before you plan it. That is why it's called statistical analysis plan. And ethical consideration, we should follow the 4 pillars in the ethical consideration: autonomy, informed consent, that's what I told you, withdrawal rights. The patient should have the right to withdraw them from the study if they feel that something is not good happening with them or with the study they were promised to participate in. And the language appropriate form should be there, consent form should be there. Everything should be taken into consideration when you apply for the ethical clearance. Then beneficence, risk minimization, scientific value, everything should be mentioned. On non-maleficence, adverse events, monitoring, the stopping rules, again withdrawing rules should be followed. And justice, it should be equitable selection, no exploitation of vulnerable groups. You cannot, like suppose you are doing a study on the tribal population. First of all, tribal population is limited nowadays to do a study. If at all you are doing or conducting a study on them with the approval, you should not exploit the rights given to you, and you should not go over or take it more advantage of conducting or asking them a question. This is what I have told in the initial stage, the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart should explain everything, the timeline and the budget. Like if suppose your example PhD, if you take PhD is for 3 years, then the first 6 months what you're going to do, then 6th to 12th month what you're going to do, like step by step you should plan properly using this Gantt chart, the timeline. So the ethical clearance or approval should be obtained within some 4 or 3 months, and then the pilot study should be done, which is usually expected to complete within 6 months. Then the recruitment should be done from the 6th month or from the 5th month, within the 12th month. It all depends on what study you're going to do. So the chart which I'm showing here is not fixed. The duration which is mentioned in this slide is not fixed. It's an approximate, a plan, a model for you to know like how to go or where to go, what to do, when to follow what. Again, interventional follow-up should be carried out. Then the data cleaning should be done. Then analysis should be done. Then the writing of thesis and submission should be done from this month to this month. Institutional ethical committee. Any institutional ethical committee should have certain population in their committee. So who are they? In what post they usually recruit people for being in the committee, ethical committee. So the committee should have a chairperson who should be external to the institution. If they're internal, then there are chances for bias. So they always keep a chairperson external to the institution. Then member secretary should be there who is from the institution, and he or she will be, the secretary will be managing the operations of approving or taking it further, to whom should be sent to, or whose approval is further needed, all will be taken care by the member secretary. And basic medical scientists should be there. So the scientists will be checking on whether your work is feasible. If suppose you are asking in animal, if you are applying for the clearance in animal, then the scientist should check whether this experiment, whether it's invasive or non-invasive, what type of euthanasia, or what type of anesthesia, or what type of what method you are going to follow to sacrifice the animal, whether you are following the lethal dose. All those will be checked by this basic medical scientist. Then clinician from the relevant specialty for clinical study. If you are applying, a clinician will be involved in that, and there should be a legal expert. When I was doing PhD, just chief justice from the court was there. So like that, a qualified lawyer, and that's what sometimes the judges will be there in the committee, and a social scientist, philosopher, ethicist should be there, and a lay person who represent the community, like who will be able to communicate between the institution and the non-institutional members. So these all people should be included or should be there in any ethical committee. Now, there are certain regulatory bodies who approves your study. If suppose you are doing a clinical trial of a new drug, biological or vaccine, then the approval should be obtained from the central CDSO, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, and also from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And there are also other bodies who will regulate and approve our study, like DCGI, Drug Controller General of India, then Subject Expert Committee, who will review the technical part. And also, then finally, you upload your proposal and submit it and track in the portal. So, clinical trial study of a drug, investigation of a new medical device or in vitro diagnostic, then international studies on regular products, bioavailability, bioequivalent studies on humans, academic clinical trials of approved drug for new indications. All these should be submitted to the committees mentioned here, and then the approval should be obtained from them. Now, moving on to the registration. What is this registration? The protocol should be registered for various reasons. First of all, for maintaining the confidentiality of your work. If you register, then if anybody else is copying that work and do, you can fight against that. You can fight for your work because you have registered for it and there is evidence. So registration is must. Registering your protocol is must. And also it will help you in promote the transparency. It will help you in reducing the reviewer bias and prevent questionable research practices. It can also avoid unintended duplication of reviews. It can help you in enhancing the discoverability through both publication and protocol registration platform. So whenever you apply for a publication, whenever you send a manuscript for a publication of your systematic review or any meta-analysis, they'll ask you for the registration number. So where are the platforms? What are the platforms you can register, and when should you register your protocol? Not later than conducting final search. So initially you should do the search everything, and then you should register your protocol and then start the study. It's better to do that way. Some people even start the study and register. Yes, that can be done, but there are risks in that. So you should always register no later than conducting the final search and extracting the data. Where can you register? As I told you, there are many platforms depending on what is your study related to. So there are Prospero, that is Prospective Register of Systematic Reviews. If your study is related to health and social care, welfare, public health study, educational study, crime, justice, international development related to health, all these studies can be registered under Prospero. And OSF, that is Open Science Framework, any discipline, a platform which hosts a variety of research materials, including the registrations, pre-registrations, preprints, data, and supplementary materials. These all can be registered under OSF. Then studies related to social science can be registered under the Campbell collaboration. Animal study like veterinary science, agriculture, food production, all these can be registered under the platform called the Systematic Review for Animal and Food. Then environmental science policy management can be registered under the Collaboration for Environmental Evidence. Health science studies can be registered under Cochrane. And as I told you already, why you register to fight against the publication bias. In addition to whatever I have mentioned before, the platform for registration, we do have the clinicaltrials.gov. It's all international registry, largest, it's a global trial registry, mandatory for the FDA regulated trials. And the Prospero we just discussed, it is for the systematic review and dissemination. International prospective register for meta-analysis, everything can be registered using the Prospero. And ICTRP, WHO ICTRP, that is the International Clinical Trial Registry Platform. It's for a large scale research can be registered under this. How do you register? What are the step-by-step procedure you should follow to register in any clinical trials? In the CTRI, first log in or register and log into the ctri.nic.in with your institutional mail. Complete the trial data set by providing all the study design, protocol, and the endpoints, that's outcome. Then upload the ethical committee approval letter, submit for the scientific review. Then if they ask any queries, address the queries. Then you will receive the CTR ID with the reference ID, everything, which you can use it for publication. You can mention it in your document when you are applying for any funding. What, why, and who qualifies for Prospero? So as I told you, the systematic reviews and meta-analysis can be registered under Prospero, and the systematic review, not every systematic review, the systematic reviews related to health outcome will only be accepted by the Prospero, like interventions, diagnostic accuracy, prognostic factors, prevention, epidemiology, public health, service delivery, methodological reviews. Reviews of animal studies will not be registered under Prospero. You have a separate platform for registering the animal study, which is mentioned here. And the Prospero does not accept scoping reviews. As I told you, not any reviews will be accepted by Prospero. Prospero will accept only the systematic reviews related to the health related outcome. Scoping reviews and literature reviews without the systematic synthesis will not be accepted by the Prospero. Reviews without a clear health related outcome also will not be accepted. Reviews assessing sports performance as the primary outcome will not be accepted. Reviews where data extraction has already begun, so better you register before the data extraction. The 5 steps the same like what we saw for the CTRI registration, here also same. So register and log into your Prospero account. Before you register, before you create an ID for your Prospero, make sure you have collected all the detail, prepared your protocol fully, and then you create the account and register for it. Complete the form given in the application inside the registration portal. Then after you fill up the details like your name, your institution name, what is your study, what are the populations included, everything should be registered in that. And submit, and then review your submission, then you approve it, or the approval will be given to you from the other side, and then you will get the ID for your registration. As I told you, inside the form, there will be so many sections which you have to fill up. There will be administrative section, there will be methodological section, there will be outcome analysis. So in the administrative section, you will be asked to mention your title, anticipated start, completion dates, stage of the review, and name the contact, organization name, ORCID ID, team members, affiliations, funding resources, and the sponsors. If there is any conflict of interest and declaration, everything will be asked in the administrative section. Then methodological section, what is your format, like PICO, what are the populations included, outcomes, everything will be asked. And the database will be asked what type of SAP you followed, all those will be asked in that. And the link, if at all you have done or taken data or extracted data from any link, you should give the link. And the condition or domain being studies the participants population, yeah, the PICO, whatever you used in your study should be mentioned there. Then in the outcome and analysis section, you should explain your primary outcome, then secondary outcome, the strategy or the tool what you used for data extraction, the bias, quality assessment tool, everything should be mentioned in the outcome and analysis section. After registration, we should wait for the after registration also you can even update. Sometimes we may feel like adding something to it, some new idea, new method, something. Yeah, you are free to add by giving the amendment, but it should be approved from the other side. Only after approval it is confirmed. So you can apply for the amendment, apply for the changes you want to make, and you can update the status. Then after the completion, you can wait for their approval, or if you want to withdraw also, you are allowed to withdraw. And certain justification should be given for withdrawing. Then usually what common mistakes we do while applying for the registration is we will be registering too late. By that time our data would have been used by somebody else, or studies something related to the same data would have been done by someone and they might have registered it. And there should, if it is a vague, if the outcome is vague, then also it will be rejected. And the scoping mismatch, if our systematic review is not falling under the scope of that Prospero or any registry, then also there are chances to get rejected. Multiple registrations, sometimes we'll have three members, like a supervisor will be there, co-supervisor will be there, then the investigator will be there. Without the teamwork, due to the lack of teamwork and lack of communication, everyone will be trying to register with the same protocol to the registry platform. So again, that will cause the duplication of registration and it will be rejected. Then changing outcome without logging an amendment, without giving any amendment, if you try to change, then also it will be rejected. So these all should be taken care of when you register for your protocol. And there are certain journals who accept the protocols for publication. They are like BMJ Open, they accept the protocol, and Biomed Central. Then there are journals like Springer, Plus One, they all will accept the protocols for publication. But I think if you all are from Manipal, Manipal has the criteria that you have to publish this many articles to be eligible for registering your thesis or PhD. So if you consider publishing a protocol and applying this protocol publication published one to consider to that criteria, they will not accept the protocol publication as a consideration for carrying out or submitting your thesis. So kindly check that. Fatal loss in protocol writing. And so far we saw the flaws or mistakes in protocol registration. What are the flaws in protocol writing? When you are writing itself, you should be very clear about what you are going to write. So ambiguous endpoints, composite outcomes without any proper specification will be ending up in trouble. And the timeline should be maintained or mentioned very well. Sample size should be very clear. So make sure this sample size, what you are quoting or mentioning your proposal or protocol, is enough or it's too much. All those should be checked. Weak ethical framing. So all this should be taken into consideration. So the summary of today's session, we should follow certain rules and regulations and certain steps to write a protocol so that we avoid the rejections and then we avoid producing a unsuccessful experiment. So what are the criteria we should follow? Pre-specify everything. The protocol, as I told you, it's a binding of scientific, ethical, and legal commitment. So you should make sure all these three criteria are followed. Frame the study, just don't list them. So use the framework like Finer, PyCode, SMART, all these, and then try to uh, enclose or disclose your studies. Match design to question. Casual questions need experimental design. Descriptive questions don't need. And use the statistical analysis very clearly and straightforward and be clear with them. Justify why you are using the symbol, what is the symbol, whether the significant is less than 0.05 or more than whatever tools we have used states, everything should be clearly mentioned. And write the SAP, that is the statistical analysis plan, and make sure what you mentioned, what software you used, what are the methodology used, everything should be clear. And mention the ethical clearance approval number or the registration number, and everything should be clear before you complete the uh, protocol. And document every change. We just discussed about amendments. You can give amendments, right? So whenever you are making any change, document it, so that in the future, if at all you are asked to submit those changes, and the timeline when you submitted those changes, you should be ready to submit that. So what we are trying to say is a meticulous protocol. Like if you think that yes, my study is very good, it's a meticulous and scientific study, that's good. A meticulous protocol is good, but it does not guarantee a successful study. But a careless one can get wasted, can pull you down from what all you have struggled. So make sure you are following all the scientific, ethical, and legal commitments. Make sure you are having proper duration, the timeline, and the funding. Then you carry out your study. So that's what we say, the final feasible, interesting, novelty, and the timestamp. Everything should be followed in that. Any questions still here? Any questions? Any questions the audience want to clarify?